Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We've had, of course, statements and remarks by PTI leadership saying that the negotiations have been called off, and then we've had remarks saying that that's being considered, but so this and that they might reconsider. On and off this kind of an engagement, inconsistent engagement that we've seen. We'll be talking about this. We'll also be talking about the government's response and their willingness to continue these talks that we've seen, the reaction of it, and of course as far as the demands that have been put forward by PTI, the Judicial Commission, and whether the formulation, whether it's possible, and how does the government look at these demands, and whether they're in a position to do a lot of what the PTI is asking as far as these negotiations are concerned, as far as the seriousness of them, all of that today on Perspective. I have with me Aniq Zafar, who's a political analyst. Thank you for being with us today. We also have with us Dr. Niaz Murtaza. Thank you for being with us today, and Barrister Safi Ghauri, who's a legal expert. I'm going to start with Aniq Saab here. Aniq Saab, we've seen this to and fro exchange, and it's not the first time. These negotiations start, and then there is this conversation that starts. Of course, where it came to this time, perhaps they've made more headway. One can argue that, but what is behind this to and fro thing, in your opinion, and the seriousness of it overall?
Okay, so when thank you very much for having me on the show. When two parties negotiate in the sphere of politics, there is always some basic understanding that they need, that they understand, they realize that they have to move forward and come to some bare minimum agreement on a number of issues or one or two issues. But one thing which is almost certain is that no political talk can move forward if there are preconditions attached.
Okay.
So when the government side decided to ask for a written charter of demands, a complete charter of demands after passage of about 42 days was presented, and one of the key demands was establishment of the commissions. But PTI said that we will not be moving forward without the establishment of the commissions. Now I think that was a position that was inherently there was an inbuilt inherent flaw in it, that it had to come to a conclusion where either you break the negotiations or you step back from that.
Okay.
That is why you never put such hard stances in negotiations.
Okay.
You keep space.
You're saying that hardness, or that there's no flexibility from the government side, or the
I think both sides. Both sides perhaps started with the premise that they are gaining time for certain other developments to take place.
Okay.
And once those developments take place, then they will be in a better position to negotiate.
Okay,
for example, the government wanted that it should drag the negotiations to the point where Mr. Khan is convicted.
Okay.
And on the other hand, some people in PTI thought that, or they made it clear, perhaps number of their supporters, that they thought that Mr. Trump's coming into power, and after that they will be in a better position. So the government side got what it wanted. Mr. Trump came into power, but I think that expecting Mr. Trump to intervene on behalf of PTI or Mr. Imran Khan immediately was sort of a very, very hopeful scenario that is not coming about. So now PTI has to calculate that what is it that it has to offer.
First of all, of course, which party is in a position of strength when negotiations are taking place anywhere is of course something that happens in any negotiations.
Yep.
And in this case, the government and the opposition, let me include Dr. Niaz also in this discussion, want to be in a position of strength, so to speak. Whether they are in a position of strength or not, the premise is that both sides are sincere and serious. Do you think that's true, Dr. Niaz? Let me, this question to you. Do you think, first of all, that both sides are sincere in that effort to ensure that this leads somewhere, and then we'll talk about the position of strength and the events that they expected, and the expectation of it?
Well, I mean, I think we should assume that they're sincere if they're taking the trouble. But I think what the problem is that there is so much mistrust on both sides. Neither side really trusts each other. The PTI does have a history of walking out of negotiations. In fact, not even being prepared to negotiate. Earlier, it was talking about only talking to the establishment, which was the wrong demand. But then now, it's given up on those demands, as well as it's some of the bigger demands like the election issue, the 26th Amendment issue, and it has a more manageable list of demands right now. And in any situation like that, you have there are always hiccups on the way. So even though there is some kind of an announcement that
what was behind the deadline that came in from the former Prime Minister, saying that they have to be done within this time period? We saw that deadline also in the field till a few days ago, and then now seems to be sort of a backtracking on that they have to come back within that time period, the 7-day period, so to speak.
I think it might be just a pressure tactic. I think the things will still move ahead, and I think they've already backtracked. They said talks are now on hold. So now that means that they're waiting for the response from the government. So it would be good for the government to also take a decision on that, and hopefully a positive decision, because Judicial Commission is not a very huge issue. They have done that in the past. In 2014, when there was the election issue between the two parties, they ultimately agreed on Judicial Commission, which basically finished the issue. Both sides then accepted the findings of the election. This Judicial Commission that was made, even though it was against PTI, they went along with it. So let's hope that now the government should take some steps to create the necessary environment and a bit of trust on both sides, a goodwill gesture, so that talks do move forward. You have to go beyond a very, very narrow remit, take out of the box kind of decisions to push things ahead, because it's in the benefit of both sides, and it's in the benefit of the country if they can come to some agreement which allows some political stability that will lead to economic stability. So I would suggest to the government to take some measure that provides some impetus into the talk.
Right, fair enough. Safiullah, how do you look at this? First of all, this negotiation that's happening, these talks that are happening, the play for a position of strength on both sides, let's say.
Yes, Mahrukh, so how I look at it is almost always like I've looked at things, which is that we need to look at things pragmatically. We need to understand who has a history of doing what. And if you remember, we had been discussing even on your show earlier that everything that's happening right now is expected. I remember that on your show we discussed that the time was going to be an issue because the timeline of 7 days was just downright unreasonable. There's no way anything could have happened within 7 days. Governments don't move like that. Even for important, urgent, pressing issues of the state, governments have been unable to perform functions within 7 days. So I strongly doubted that the government negotiating committee would go back and then they would be able to go through the Ministry of Law and through the various bureaucracies that were necessary to even comply with such a demand. But then we saw that PTI backed out. Then the next day PTI said that it's putting it on hold, and that's where the real drama is. I mean, the whole problem is that PTI tends to make it into a soap opera with its constant twists and turns, and what I think of it might be a little less relevant than what an average worker within PTI would think of this. Like, I don't understand what happens to them when they're reading one day that their leader is saying go talk, the next day he's saying no, don't talk. Now, just right now, before getting on this talk, I saw that Gandapur has been removed as the president of KPK PTI and somebody else has been placed, and now that person is going to come in and start negotiating. And that's what the problem is. Every single moment they're changing their negotiators, they're changing their teams, they're fighting amongst themselves. You see Sheikh Afzal Marwa fighting with Salman Kamraja, and these are all senior leaders within the party who are right now fighting over what they want to negotiate. There is no consensus. And once again, just today, the latest demand once again is a very strange demand, which is let the negotiation committee meet Imran Khan. The negotiation committee already meets Imran Khan almost on a daily basis. So I don't know what they mean when they say this is late.
Do you think that there's also a lack of trust, maybe one can say, between the team and, the former Prime Minister, or overall also? Because we keep saying and hearing different versions of the same thing being put forward, and like you said, changes being made in terms of who the negotiator will be and all of that also.
Absolutely. So that's the problem. This is what I've been saying for a very long time, that PTI by its very nature is such a fragmented, decentralized party. There is no central leadership. We do not know who, and Imran Khan, I mean, one could say, of course, the central leadership is Imran Khan, but even he changes his mind almost on an hourly basis. So since there is no defining vision, since they do not have a plan, and even I want to explain one thing, which is very important, that even when PTI put forward its terms, they said that these were not its terms. After putting them forward as terms, they said these are not our terms, these are our preconditions to enter into top terms. So the fact that they keep changing the semantics of whatever is being said is so damaging. And I'll just take like 2 more minutes just to explain something about the problems of fake news and the fake propaganda that they do. So for instance, all of yesterday, Twitter was full of the fact that our interior minister went to the USA, met a congressman, and after the meeting with the congressman tweeted, "Free Imran Khan." Okay, fine. I mean, that's definitely insulting for the Pakistan government, in the sense that if they have a meeting and then right after the meeting he does that. But I think what's more, this is where the fake news comes in. What's more important is for us to understand that his tweet was not just "Free Imran Khan." His tweet was also against China. His tweet was also against Iran. His tweet was also against Yemen. His tweet was also against Syria. So he put out a series of tweets against all Muslim countries. And that can only lead me to believe that the conversation that must have taken place was about maybe some military base, maybe about some local geopolitics within the region that involved China, Pakistan.
And quoting out of context and, fake news downright is something that's happening a lot, and we know that it's been happening, and primarily the one party that unfortunately seems to be responsible every time one looks around. Those are some glaring realities that one has to face, right?
Absolutely. So this is the point I'm making, right? That what they do is, something came out. Now, this is a charge sheet against PTI for all intents and purposes. If one was to just go on that US congressman's Twitter and look at what he has been tweeting, you would think that PTI is in cahoots with Israel and other parties because of the way he's putting pressure on all Muslim countries like that. But instead, what they do is they take only a snapshot of what has been said and make it look like the entire government has failed and they are the ones who have succeeded. And this is what typical PTI behavior is on a domestic level, on an international level. No matter what way you look at it, they have this mindless horde of zombies who just continue to follow them without even cross-checking anything that is being said on the social media pages. And that's where the real problem is. So I suppose that's part of the reason why the government has now passed what is a very controversial PECA Act. I don't know how that will go down. But the fact remains that since we last spoke about it, Mahrukh, which
there's a foundation for it. There's a reason why we have the PECA Act, and we know what's been happening for a couple of years now. Whatever your stance may be on on it, or whether you support it or you don't support it, there is a problem. That is what I'm saying. That's the starting point of it. And one has to concede that Pakistan has been, and let me include Aniq Sab in this also. Aniq Sab, we do, whether one supports this or not, the question is that there has been a problem. And there is a continuing problem of fake news. There is a continuing problem of propaganda. There is a continuing problem of being able to decipher, reality from what is being put forward. So Pakistan is dealing with those challenges, and for the government has to find a way to deal with that.
Oh, well, the problem of fake news and misinformation perhaps is now larger than the states themselves. What we are witnessing is an era in which I think these capitalist, or you can say big money, who will be controlling these platforms, will be deciding the narratives not only about politics in their own countries, but in politics in other countries as well.
And if you just look at the guest list,
you have seen the example of Elon Musk influencing this election.
That's
through
what I'm
Twitter.
saying. And if you just look at the guest list of the inauguration of Donald Trump, you'll be able to see where the power seems to now be headed.
Yeah. He has the AI guys on his side. He has the Amazon guy. He has the Facebook guy. He has the Twitter guy and X guy. So all are standing by him, and now what we are witnessing is that Elon Musk even wants to influence the election in Germany. He wants to influence the election in UK, and I don't know tomorrow if he decides to influence the election in Pakistan. How are we going to sort of give a pushback? Now the problem is that state or the old style governance structures and politics only understand that there is a way of controlling such narratives, and that is through administrative measures, coercive measures, stopping the flow of information. I sincerely believe that states have to do much better than that. There should be some regulations, but countering such narratives, no one has so far found a formula for that, but I think that is where the government should be, everywhere governments should be putting their effort, that they should find a counter, a tactic and strategy to counter such campaigns and misinformation and disinformation. Having said that, I do believe that disinformation and lies spread very fast on the social media, and these have real life impact. The problem has been that these platforms, when you talk to these platforms, I have had the opportunity to talk to some of the platforms on fake news, and normally the refrain would be, so what is the real life harm, right? So I am always astonished by that line, that what is the real life harm. Normally what happens is that you start developing a misinformation or disinformation, or you start
which becomes
developing a hatred driven propaganda, which ultimately leads to hate speech, and
that
ultimately into violence and crime. So that is the progression that most people don't understand, and that is a big debate in US also, where Trump and Elon Musk and all the conservatives are talking about free speech and all that. Free speech is sacred, we understand that, but in Pakistan's context also, I would not like the state and the government to be over-regulating the digital space, but again the question will remain how to stop this misinformation, disinformation, which has real life impact on economy, on politics, on people's security, and so many other things.
Very true. Let me include Dr. Niaz in this. Dr. Niaz, we also, of course, the propaganda element of it, and what is true and what is not true, and as far as which political party and the kind of propaganda that is put forward. Leaving that aside at this time, as far as organizational issues within the party are concerned, as an effective opposition, whether these negotiations happen, whether they don't happen, that is something that the PTI needs to focus on regardless. Of course, the former Prime Minister is not here, but even so, do you think that, they as a party, for them to function, those issues are certainly becoming more stark than before now, for everyone to see?
Well, yeah, I mean, given what the party has gone through over the last 2 years, the defections, the arrests, some people have gone underground. So, the whole structure has basically collapsed, and they have not been able to find, replace the people who've left with, equally experienced people. But, if you look at, from the lens of the importance of this dialogue, then the government can also take some steps. There are people like Shah Mahmood Qureshi who are very well experienced, who are respected all across the spectrum, who's a moderate. So maybe the government can find a leeway where he can head or at least participate in the negotiations, because that would give clear leadership. Shah Mahmood Qureshi is heads and shoulders above any other leader except Imran Khan
Statements come
himself.
from him to the tune that he's not being taken on board with regard to these negotiations at all.
Yeah. So, if he's around, then obviously, PTI will have to take him on board. But still, you also see positives. So, for example, yesterday, they agreed on the appointment of, the PAC chairperson, somebody from, PTI. It was a unanimous vote. So that's good. At least they've been able to agree. So maybe, now they can set a next target of, the election commission, because those people, I think there are 3 people, including the head, whose term is expired or about to expire. So, if they can get together and, come to some agreement instead of the government using this clause where, the current person can now continue.
I want to come to this. Yes, I think that's a very important point that Niaz Sahab is making. And I'll take Safi's opinion on this also. Niaz Sahab has very aptly said, Safiullah, that this may be a silver lining. One can look at it as far as the PAC appointment is concerned. And we've seen, so there seems to be some kind of, some things it looks like are working as far as these talks or no talks are concerned. And then with regard to the appointment, like Niaz Sahab is saying, of the election, chief of the election commission overall, do you think that there are chances that things can move forward in that regard also, and we can see the beginning of a relationship, working out between the government and the opposition?
So, my opinion is very simple, and I've always maintained the same thing, which is that the government has every reason to negotiate with PTI. The government has a lot to lose if the PTI does not get on board, because they are currently in the government right now. It's their performance by one party consistently creating problems, coming out on the road. They will obviously continue to suffer right more. Even in the recent dharnas, where one can agree that PTI was 100% at fault, it is at the end of the day the fallout which the government had to suffer of 21 billion rupees. So the government is responsible. The government is, in my opinion, trying to make some effort, whatever they can do, they're trying to do. The problem comes back to the fact that PTI itself is not clear on how they want to move ahead with things. There are too many heads within PTI, too many people, too many talks. So I think at the end of the day, the best thing that the government can do is try to promote the senior elements within PTI, talk to them more, give them more importance, give them more respect. Tell the people within PTI that we are going to listen to X, Y, and Z because they made a good point, but we are going to ignore, the other people because they are saying things that are detrimental to Pakistan and to PTI themselves. Now, I'm just going to go back to a point that Aniq Sahab was making, and I think it's sort of very important to understand the kind of mindset that Pakistanis have ended up developing. So Aniq Sahab very rightly pointed out that Elon Musk is currently influencing elections in a lot of countries, and he said that he doesn't know if he will in Pakistan. Well, he is actually tweeting about Pakistan almost on a daily basis. Even today in the morning he tweeted about Pakistan. Yesterday he tweeted about Pakistan. Day before yesterday he tweeted about Pakistan. What is he saying? What he's saying is, it's very interesting. What he's saying is he tweets against Pakistan because of the Starlink issue. He keeps saying that the government is corrupt, it's not giving me Starlink. The government obviously has its reasons to not give Starlink licensing in Pakistan as yet. But that's one aspect. The other aspect that Elon Musk tweets against Pakistanis is downright racist, which is that he is calling Pakistanis rapists in the grooming gangs issues of the UK. And whereas the UK police has come out and clearly stated that only 3% of the rapists were Pakistanis and 85% were white, Elon Musk even today in the morning called Pakistanis rapists. And he's continuing to target Pakistanis, which is just 3% of the overall rape stats of the UK, continuing to target Pakistanis on a daily basis. Now, and what is the response? This is what's very important to understand, and this is why I say that we as Pakistanis need to understand what's happened to us. What is the response of Pakistanis? Should Pakistan, I as a Pakistani feel extremely unhappy with Elon Musk? I consider him now to be a person who has personally insulted me by calling Pakistanis as a whole, not Pakistani grooming gangs, but Pakistanis as a whole country of rapists and stuff like that. By this is an insult. But what do we see? We see PTI constantly reaching out to Elon Musk. You see PTI supporters, PTI leaders retweeting Elon Musk, saying, "Oh, Elon Musk, please, you must help us against this corruption. You must help us against this corrupt government." Blah 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 blah. What are they doing? I mean, he is in fact calling PTI workers and PTI people themselves rapists. In fact, the majority of the UK support of any political party is PTI. So the very people he's calling rapists are now reaching out to him for support, and that's the problem. This is why we as Pakistanis need to really start educating ourselves on what's happening globally. How do leaders deal with it? I want to sort of talk about one more example. And Aniq also said that we don't know how to deal with social media problems that are being created. We actually do. So as you know, I'm in Brazil right now. Elon Musk started tweeting against the president of Brazil, Lula, in the same manner. Brazil banned Twitter. It's as simple as that. They just put an end to Twitter. And then after that, they sat with Elon Musk and they had a complete settlement on what will be said about Brazil on Twitter. And only when Twitter finally signed that document and appeared before a judge here, where a settlement deed was signed, that Twitter was opened again. I think we should do the same. We should allow Twitter to operate in Pakistan under certain terms and conditions, just like we do so for TikTok. So, at the end of the day, these things can be regulated. The government has to negotiate. The fact that the government is not negotiating with Twitter also...
So, in terms of the propaganda, again, it also, what you've just said highlights the fact that so much of what's happening on social media, so much of what's going around is being retweeted, is being engaged with without really understanding the context at all. And that is the problem that the government is facing, overall, whether we look at the political context of it or whether we look at any context. You've just spoken about, Pakistanis being called, criminals, and yet those Pakistanis, like you said, continue to engage. So the context and understanding of it is also a huge problem, and how we deal with it as a society is also something that we all need to reflect on. There is that also. One has to agree, and all political parties need to focus on that. Whether these negotiations happen or not, and let me include Niaz in this also. Niaz, whatever happens, as far as political parties are concerned, all political parties have a responsibility to their followers, and they also have a responsibility of ensuring that those followers understand what they are tweeting, or the context in which things are being tweeted when they stand under the umbrella of a political party. Isn't that true?
Well, but I guess the question is, how do you define the umbrella of a political party? If it's people sitting outside who are, basically YouTubers, they don't really have, an official position within the party. If it's, a senior leader of the party, any party tweeting wrong things, that's a different thing. But, if it's YouTubers who are seen to have sympathy with one party or the other, who tweet, whose main goal is to make some money out of YouTube and create sensationalism. So I think we should be a bit careful in terms of blaming a party for the actions of such freelancers, but definitely senior political leaders to be much more careful, and it would also be good if they condemn and clarify the fact that such and such YouTubers are not really part of the party, and the party is not responsible for what they are saying, and it doesn't own what they are saying. Anything that can help the dialogue. I think it's important if they develop a habit of every week setting small targets of achievements which both parties can agree on. I think that will develop a momentum that will give the confidence and the trust to both sides to start tackling the more difficult, the more well entrenched issues, and I think that will lead to more political stability in the country.
Fair enough. Let me include Aniq Zafar. Aniq Zafar, as far as we've seen that there is PTI Secretary General has confirmed that PTI will not attend the session of the National Assembly that's supposed to be convened on January 28th because they're not satisfied with the charter, the response of the government to the Charter of Demands. How serious is this Charter of Demands in your opinion that the PTI is giving?
Are you talking about the negotiations committee meeting or the National Assembly meeting?
The National Assembly session they will not attend because they're not happy with the government's response to their Charter of Demands.
So they are boycotting the National Assembly session?
Yes.
Okay.
In terms of the Charter of Demands, how do you think flexible is it, in your opinion?
Well, again, when any party puts up a Charter of Demand, that party also understands that all these demands are not going to be met. So when you sit down on the table, there is some give and take. So I do believe that there is a lot of space within that Charter of Demand which can be agreed upon, and there can be a few things which both parties can agree that there can be a timeline to that, and there are a few demands which can be totally dropped. So because obviously if you are saying that Mr. A, B, C, D should be immediately released from the jail, that's not possible, because there is a court process, there is legal process, then there are issues with the military court. There are people who are arrested under Anti-Terrorism Act. Anti-Terrorism Act is non-compoundable. So all these things are interlinked. But given all these facts, I do believe that there is enough flexibility within the Charter of Demand, and the government should look into it, and PTI should also understand that they have to negotiate with a government. They actually are currently in a position where they have used their street power so many times that is no more a sort of a leverage point with them for at least next 3, 4, 5 months. So
what do you think is the leverage that they have at this moment?
Leverage, of course, leverage is that they do represent a significant number of Pakistan's people.
They have government in KP.
They have a government in KP. They have been able to run a very successful social media campaign and a very successful campaign influencing some foreign capitals, not capitals, I must say some of the political leaders there, and they have been able to create an echo chamber, engagement, and all that.
But they don't have the kind of street power that they had envisaged, or
they have not really been able to use that street power to remove the government or get the government to agree to their Charter of Demands.
Whether they have the numbers anyway, because we've seen
that is debatable. So what kind of numbers can actually do that? And as someone who believes that no government should be the government should not succumb to mobs and street power like that, and frankly that kind of street power was not demonstrated. There have been instances in the world where street power has brought up change,
but the numbers are frankly not seen, the kind of numbers
that kind of numbers were not there. Certainly. So they do not have that kind of leverage right now. But again, if the government needs to complete its term with some stability,
and
some sense of so, and all governments should try to keep streets and people happy,
and also have a kind of effective opposition, a working relationship with the opposition, which is what
that is always positive
for the country. At this point, let me go to Safiullah. How, as a lawyer, as far as this demand for judicial commission is concerned, do you think it's something that is a possibility, something that can be acceded to by the government as far as these demands are concerned?
Yes, it's a very, very interesting demand, and I don't think it can be. There's a legal problem with the way it happens. So they're relying on the Judicial Commission Act or the Local Commission Act. Either of the two could be used by the court. The courts have the power. The government can file an application with the court, with the Chief Justice. But the demand here is that we will choose the judges. We will pick and choose who the judges are going to be. That is unheard of. That does not happen under any circumstance. I have been a lawyer now for 17 years. I have never been able to pick a judge of my choice. Every time I have gone on to establish a local commission, I simply cannot. The judge would kick me out of the court and disbar me. So the reality of the matter is that this is an application that the government can make to the Chief Justice of Pakistan, requesting that he form such a commission. The composition of the commission is the power of the Chief Justice. It is not the power of PTI. It is not the power of the government. That is one of the reasons this demand was incorrect to begin with. And that is what the government should have responded with. They should have just gone back and said that we cannot form a commission based on your choice. It has to be done by the Chief Justice. We will file an application. The Chief Justice will see to whatever the Chief Justice has to do.
But
so,
I have an issue with the 26th Amendment. So, you know, there are a lot of issues at this time that, you know, the conditions at this time that the PTI is talking about. They want a reversal of that. They also, you know, of course, as far as Article 63A, 238, 239, you know those demands also. So some of them, you know, the most amenable out of these, of course, you know, what the government can do and how much they can do. Again, that is the question, right?
Yeah. So I think, in my opinion, what the government can do and perhaps should do is at least file an application with the Chief Justice of Pakistan. Then the government can go back and say, all right, fine, we have fulfilled the demand, we have filed an application. Now it's up to the Chief Justice whether he fulfills his demand or not. Keep in mind, it says this is not binding on the Chief Justice of Pakistan. He does not need to make a commission. He can see if this is something that we have precedents on both sides. We have precedents where Chief Justices have established commissions. We also have precedents where Chief Justices have refused to form commissions, saying that they will be overstepping into the domain of politics. So let the Chief Justice decide, as every matter in Pakistan anyways, and the government should not cover away from filing an application of this sort. That's what I honestly believe in at this stage.
And, you know, as far as the other demands are concerned?
The release of political prisoners, I don't know. See, that's also the other. There were two demands, right? The other one was the release of political prisoners. Which political prisoners? They have not been named. So how can the government fulfill a demand when they do not know which ones? And if they were to give a list, then the government can go back, look at the list, see what they have been accused of, and then accordingly decide if the government can in any manner entertain them. If they were arrested under MPO, sure, I think the government can then file applications and get them out. If they were arrested under ATA, no, the government cannot do so. So there are various laws and there are various preconditions. PTI, by the way, it's also very interesting to say here that PTI initially said that there were 6,000 political prisoners. Now the number has gone down to 33. So who those 33 are, who those initial 6,000 were, we don't know. PTI cannot give a list. And I'll tell you why the PTI cannot give a list. Because if they do give a list, they will be shooting themselves in the foot. Because then they will themselves be admitting that they had been lying to their own people, saying that there were thousands of political prisoners when
Right. So there's somewhat of a problem there. Niaz, I want your opinion on this as far as, you know, local government elections are concerned. That's also something that has come up. Things like this perhaps, you know, is something that the government can think about, and, you know, those things that are anyway or have been on the agenda. So there are such demands, like Safiullah also said, that, you know, on which the government can perhaps move forward, and to show that, you know, they have show their good faith, and to show that they're serious about this, right?
Yeah, well, of course, you know, local government elections are the domain of provincial governments. That's not something, you know, that the federal government can grant except for the elections for Islamabad. But then, since, you know, the provincial governments also belong to, you know, the same parties, you know, yes, definitely, you know, local government elections should be held. You know, it's part of democracy, it strengthens government. The issue would be ensuring that, you know, the elections are free and fair, and that, you know, PTI people have, you know, the ability to be able to participate in them freely. And for that, you know, having, you know, a new election commission would be the right step.
They have those things also. Those are issues. Fair enough. Let me. Unfortunately, I'm also out of time, but I want to go to Aniq Zafar. Aniq Zafar, do you see this moving forward in the recent future? Do you think that there's a good chance that perhaps, you know, we will see some further movement on these negotiations at this time? What is your overall opinion?
I hope so, but I'm not very positive. I think so far only one development, that is election of the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee. That is a very positive step. In response, if PTI has said that they will not be attending the National Assembly session, that means that positivity that was created because of the election of the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee has not sustained. That's how I look at it. If they do attend the session, there is another day to go, then perhaps we can expect. So there will be a number of developments and markers we will have to continuously monitor to see if it moves forward.
Right.
But in the current circumstances, I think, as rightly pointed out by my fellow panelist, Mr. Safi, that there are too many changes happening within the PTI also. So we are not sure that whether this negotiations committee will survive the player of the chairman of the party or not.
That is extremely important. Thank you so much for being with us today. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you for joining us, Aniq Zafar Sahab. Thank you for being with us. Dr. Niaz Murtaza, thank you for joining us today. Barrister Safi Ghauri, thank you for being with us today. Overall, of course, we don't know at this point whether the negotiations will actually pan out or not, because we do see a to and fro happening. We see one step forward, two steps backward approach. We also see a dismantling of the negotiations committee within the PTI as a political party also, and changes within happening. But of course, the fingers are crossed, and we hope that there will be some headway, and we hope that there will be. And of course, we've seen the PAC appointment also. Perhaps that is, that silver lining, and hope that there can be some agreement between the government and the opposition. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.